Fire alarm systems, so detection and alarm systems. So NFPA 72 is the book that we're utilizing. That is the National Fire Alarm and Signaling Code. I don't have a copy of it. I've handed out all of my books and never got them returned or replaced. So that is one of them that I don't have extras on. The codes that will send us to what is required to have a fire alarm and detection system in a building is going to be NFPA 1, NFPA 101, special occupancy and process standard codes, and then the building codes, the applicable building codes. So the building codes kind of, very much like NFPA 1, NFPA 101 will tell us when we have to have it. And there are cases where the building code says you have to have a fire alarm system, but NFPA doesn't. So again, going down to, and especially for you code officials, when you get the phone call that says, well, the fire marshal's office says we don't have to have it. We always try to throw that caveat in there that we're only speaking on NFPA's behalf, okay? The life safety code says you don't need to have it. But check with the local building official for the building codes because that may dictate it. Or a local ordinance, because there are a lot of municipalities that actually have ordinances for fire alarms. Building over 2,500 square feet, commercial building has to have a fire alarm system. I've seen that in local ordinances. We don't keep track of local ordinances. It would be way too difficult. They get changed on an annual basis sometimes, depending on who's, has an agenda or an axe to grind or whatever. So we don't keep track of that at all. We just defer to the local code officials because you know your ordinances.
So does building code supersede NFPA?
No, it may be more stringent, okay? Most of the time, they're pretty mirrored. They're pretty close. And we've worked hard to get it that way and keep it that way. What happens in the future is tough to tell. Okay? Like I said, NFPA 101 or local ordinances will dictate when a fire alarm system, or going backwards to a sprinkler system, may be required in a building. NFPA 72 determines the how and where. How do I install it? Where do I install it? How do I do inspection, testing, maintenance of it? Different than the NFPA 13, different than sprinklers. Sprinklers has its own inspection and testing maintenance book, which is NFPA 25. Fire alarms, detection systems, utilizes the same book. NFPA 72 covers everything, covers both. NFPA 70, the National Electrical Code, covers the wiring methods. So in order to install a fire alarm system in the state of Maine, you also have to hold a electrical license of sort. Fire alarm systems, if that's all you're gonna do, is considered a limited electrical license. Okay, you have a limited license. Basic components of a fire alarm system, super easy. You have all of your, they have written smoke detectors, but you have all of your detection devices, okay? That is an initiating device. It initiates everything else to happen. It tells us, it initiates that we have an issue going on. So we have initiating devices that sends a signal back to a control panel and says we have to send out and transmit an alarm. It transmits to a alarm notification appliance, an audible or visual or both appliance. On the walls by each of these doors and over here, those are audible and visual. They're horn strobes, okay? They make noise and they strobe. Some control panels and some systems, if it is a monitored fire alarm system, will send a signal out to a central station. That is a monitoring company. Protection One, Seacoast Security, Cunningham Security. Those are approved central stations, okay? They have the ability to receive all of this information and figure out what's going on and send out a signal to alert or call a fire department or some sort of a facility. Some facilities actually do their own central station. You look at a jail, we talked about the Wyndham Correctional Facility. They actually, and you talked about a control room, you know, where they control the doors. They actually have control of the fire alarm system as well. It's constantly monitored by them 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They have somebody sitting in that seat. They're not only saying, you know, open door number or whatever, you know, to let prisoner whatever into that room. They're also receiving any alarms that are coming in. They determine if there's an issue, they call the fire department. But they're approved to be a central station. So super basic on the components. So initiating devices, they can be automatic. And automatic initiating devices are something like a detector. Okay, detects that there's flames or smoke, sends a signal to back to the system. It could be a manual. This is a manual pull station for those of you who can see it at the doors. Okay, that is a manual initiating device. And then we have supervisory. We talked about supervision of valves, right? We talked about those valves that if you open or close it, it sends a signal. Supervised valves, that is a supervisory portion of a fire alarm system. Notifies that somebody is tampering with the valves. Water flow devices, that little picture that we saw, the electronic control with the inline of the pipe, that moves that flapper, sends a signal that water is flowing. That is a supervisory device. Then we have our notification devices, as I pointed out, horns, strobes, could be a screen. Some large facilities like the Bangor waterfront or the Cross Centers, if a fire alarm goes off, they actually have it on the screen. Fire alarm, emergency, exit the building, you know, walk, don't run, blah, blah, blah. And then we have the processing portion of it, which is the fire alarm control panel. This thing right here. This is the brains. It receives all the signals and sends signals out. So manual pull stations, only used for fire alarm initiating purposes. Hold down to alert. They have to be mounted between 42 and 48 inches above the floor level. As an inspector, and here's a big debate that we've had in past, as an inspector, if I find that it's not installed correctly, that is not a deficiency during an inspection. It's existing, okay? That is, when we're doing an inspection, if it's brand new, you call it out. That's okay. You call out that the installation was incorrect. But as an inspector, I just need to make sure that I have a manual initiating device in place and that it's functional. Has to be located within 5 feet of the exit doorway opening at each exit on each floor. That's within 5 feet of the opening. That one over there is within 5 feet of the opening. Those are correct. We'll do a practice test and we'll see a specific section about that in a little bit. Well, right now. So additional boxes added so that the travel distance to the nearest box is not in excess of 200 feet. This is in relation to a corridor, okay, or travel distance. If I have to travel more than 200 feet in a building without having access to a manual pull station, I have to put one in prior to that 200 feet or right at that 200-foot mark. So if I have a corridor or a travel distance that is 210 feet Is it okay for me to have just that one manual box? No, because it tells us if we're in excess of 200 feet, then I need to add an additional box. I actually have a practice question on this that you will look up. Don't think we'll be able to practice it in class today, but I will send that to you. Mounted on both sides of a grouped opening over 40 feet. Think of a mall setting, big mall concourse, okay? My exits, they're huge. Okay, that concourse is wide. Possibly if it's over 40 feet, then you have to have a manual pull station on either side, okay? The Portland Civic Center, I don't know if those doors are greater than 40 feet apart from each other, you know, or wide, but if they are, there should be a manual pull station on either side of that. And within 60 inches, 5 feet of each side of that opening. Within 5 feet. So I can have a manual pull station, I have to do the math, but you know, this is probably greater than 5 feet here. So maybe one here, you can have, you know, it can move somewheres over, you can't see the screen, somewheres over in this area, within 5 feet. So automatic initiation, smoke detectors are considered automatic, heat detectors, otherwise known as rate of rise detectors, okay? Flow switches, water flow switches are automatic. Here we have some automatic detectors, examples. This is an automatic detector. What is this? Looks a little funky. That is a rate of rise, okay? Rate of rise meaning a temperature. Some of these are resettable or restorable, which is those are important terms. Rate of rise and restorable or resettable. Some of them are non-restorable, meaning they're disposable. If the temperature goes up and they go into an alarm, they get replaced. The resettable, once the temperature comes down, they either reset themselves or they have to be reset. Okay? What's this one?
Is that an infrared? Can't see it.
Photo eye.
Oh, either.
It's a laser or, yes, photo eye type scenario. Kind of like your garage door has a receiver on the other side. You try to close your door and you walk past this, the door goes back up. Same scenario. It always has that beam. You break the beam with smoke, it will go into alarm. How about this one? What's this?
HVAC smoke.
Yep, a duct detector. That duct detector. That's actually in duct work. It has a sensor, a probe that goes in, and it actually sniffs every so often to check. And if it senses smoke, if it pulls smoke into it, it goes into an alarm. Rooftop units, RTUs. If you look at a control panel on a fire alarm system, you'll see RTU1, RTU2, RTU3. Rooftop units, oftentimes. Or duct 1, duct 2. There's new technology that's out there for automatic initiation devices that uses artificial intelligence. Actually, a camera watching the room, it knows what the room is supposed to look like every day. It can actually sense people's bodies, but it actually has thermal imaging where it senses temperatures, or it can tell when something is different. There are new ones out there that can actually visualize and detect a whiff of smoke. Okay, it senses something different. So we're seeing that kind of technology in a lot of the recycling centers because of lithium-ion battery fires and whatnot. So